Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Guys Podcast. Trump's nominees are winning. They're winning. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Max McGuire here with Mr. Producer Josh Hammerling. Mr. Trump, President Trump, Donald Trump said we'd be winning so much we would get tired of winning. And we're kind of there. I mean, I'm not tired of winning, but we're winning a lot. And yeah. I've been trying to watch as much of these hearings as you possibly can. I watched most of Hegseth yesterday. I watched a lot of Pam Bondi today. And it's just, they haven't laid a finger. They haven't, I mean, if you were scoring this right now, like if you were scoring Pete Hegseth, it would be unanimous decision if this was a boxing match. Yeah. I don't think the Democrats won a single round. I don't think they landed any punches.
Well, Max, here's the problem with the Democrats. They've been throwing that same punch over and over and over. They're one-trick ponies, jab, jab, hook, right? Like something awful. And that's J6. Will you ever go after Donald Trump? Yes. Who are you going to prosecute? Can I get you on the record saying you won't do it?
Who really won the 2020 election? That's what they're using their time on. They're saying, why won't use it? Listen, that's been litigated. They wanted to make that an issue. No, it's a threat to democracy. They tried to make that an issue. American people didn't buy it, saw right through it, elected Donald Trump. So we're going to play a bunch of clips. Josh pulled a bunch from Pam Bondi. I pulled a bunch from Pete Hegseth yesterday. We can play the Marco Rubio. He's going to skate through. He's been in the Senate for a long time. No one's really doubted that he's going to get through. But we're going to play some of these best moments. And I have a few AI generated. I mean, it's funny. You go through these clips. I pull most of these clips from Twitter. And AI's getting better. I mean, it's very obvious. Yeah. Like, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Though the Democrats are doing an awfully good job at putting their foot in their mouth. Mm-hmm. But AI is getting much better at changing mouths to match and making people say different things. Very funny, very interesting. Play a couple of those. Before we do, gotta tell everyone, give us a thumbs up, give us a follow, give us a like, give us a subscribe, whether you're watching on on X, on YouTube, or Rumble. Subscribe, follow us there, please. And we also have the audio edition of the podcast available everywhere the audio podcasts are found. We also have the other breaking news of the day that the hostages, many of the hostages, not all of them, many of the hostages are coming home. And there's a clip I want to get your take on. Joe Biden, well, first of all, Donald Trump took credit for it, which he should. Ever since he won the election, he said there'll be, quote, all hell to pay, end quote, if the hostages weren't released. He wanted to make this like a Ronald Reagan moment, turn Joe Biden into the Jimmy Carter, that the hostages get released right as Trump is inaugurated. Joe Biden came out today, took credit for it. Very obviously not him, right? Because this is negotiating a ceasefire. And Joe Biden is out of office in 5 days. Thank God.
All right.
In 5 days, he's no longer a party or able to even influence a ceasefire. So very obviously, like, because Hamas is negotiating this, and they want to make sure there will be a ceasefire in 6 days. So Joe Biden can offer them no promises of that. So Joe Biden, I guess, well before we get into the nominees, I want to play this clip because I don't know if you saw this today. Joe Biden was asked about whether Donald Trump played any role in this hostage negotiation release ceasefire. And his answer was very dementia Biden. Let's go ahead and play it.
Credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
Who deserves credit for this, you or Trump? Is that a joke? Ha, 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 ha. Walks away. And then here's the clip of Trump just last week.
Those hostages aren't back. I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out.
That
Wow.
is what they were responding to. It's a little hard to hear. Sorry, that clip was a little bit quiet. That's just Trump last week saying if the hostages are not released, all hell will break loose. So you have Biden trying to take a victory lap that he somehow is negotiating a lasting ceasefire when he is gone in 5 days. No one believes that. Not even Biden's own people. Here is the spokesperson. I believe this is over at the State Department. Here we go.
In getting this deal.
Wait, I'm gonna get
When it comes to the involvement of President-elect Trump's team, it has been absolutely critical in getting this deal over the line. And it's been critical because, obviously, as I stand here today, this administration's term in office will expire in 5 days. And one of the things that we have always said about this deal is that when you get from stage 1 to stage 2, that the United States, Egypt, and Qatar are the guarantors of this deal. And Egypt and Qatar will push Hamas to stay at the bargaining table and to get from stage 1 to stage 2. And the United States will push Israel to stay at the bargaining table to get from phase 1 and phase 2. So obviously those are promises we cannot make on behalf of the United States for any longer than the next 5 days. And so it's critical that all of the parties to the agreement and the other mediators see that when the United States is in the room making commitments, those are lasting commitments that extend beyond this administration into.
So basically everything I just said.
Yeah.
Everything I just said.
There's a great dagger thrown in there when he goes, this only lasts for another 5 days. You're like, wow. It's his parting shot, right? Like that. This could be his last last chance to say it, right? And when Trump says things like, I don't want to ruin your negotiations, but all hell's going to break loose, I believe him. Like, apparently Hamas did too, right? In Egypt and Qatar. Everybody associated with that, right?
Do you know the weapons? Do you know the weapon that he used against Soleimani in Iran? Have we ever talked about that?
Is it that Flechette missile?
Yeah.
Or was yeah.
It is a missile. So when people think of like Hellfire missiles, they think of it's a missile launches, hits the ground, explodes, right?
Yeah.
Soleimani, the Iranian general who was responsible for so many American deaths over in the Iraq War, he was killed with, Josh just described it perfectly, a flechette. If people don't know what flechettes are, I think I can try and pull it up. A flechette is basically, it's a little tiny little arrow.
Yeah, a dart. They're strong. They usually make them out of tough metals, especially in a weapon like this.
Yes. Very, very tough metals. And so you can get them for shotgun shells. Instead of a buckshot, you can get a bunch of flechettes. And it's kind of crazy because some of them stay airborne. Other ones tumble around.
Oh, yeah.
It's a mess, right? So what the United States hit Soleimani with was a missile, rocket, loaded with basically a bunch of giant razor blades.
Yeah.
Flechettes, but bigger. And so rather than exploding, I believe it was the vehicle he was in, it just unleashed hell and turned his body basically into ground beef, into mincemeat.
Yeah,
without
it's like one of those
collateral damage.
Yeah, it's one of those super weapons that you watch, you see in sci-fi movies where suddenly all these darts hit a car, right, and everything in it is dead. And that sends a message to people like, guess what kind of arrow we have in our quiver? If you think that was tough, imagine what happens when all hell breaks loose. And the Soleimani, hell broke loose in that moment, but boy, do they do it's surgical, man, the way they use these weapons sometimes.
So when Donald Trump says all hell is going to break loose, what he was telling them is that if they don't release these hostages, at any moment, they could be driving down the road, and the way it's described is they're like swords.
Could you imagine that?
They're like swords. Let me see if I can actually pull it up.
It's going to have sufficient weight to sit there and penetrate something. I bet they're like a meter long, right? And made of tungsten or something crazy. And they're tipped. Like, who knows? Because it's all secret squirrel stuff. We don't know.
Well, we know a little bit. We know a little bit about this one. Here we go. Here's the Hellfire R9X.
Oh, dude.
So it's got this bomb, but it has these razor blades that deploy and just mincemeat. mincemeat.
Oh, this is totally different than I was thinking.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
And
the flying
doesn't completely explode. There's no collateral damage. It's just we're aiming at the driver's seat of a car, and that driver's seat is going to be basically they're cutting the pie. Right? You ever go to Costco and you order a pizza and they put that little thing on top and they slice it? That's what this does. So when Donald Trump tells Hamas all hell will break loose, what he's actually telling them is at any moment, if you don't release his hostages, at any moment you could be driving down the road and you will cease to exist. And you will cease to exist so violently, so quickly, your brain won't even comprehend what just happened. In the brief moment where you might still have consciousness, your head will be rolling around and your body will just be mincemeat.
Dude.
And we won't have to destroy an entire city block like Israel does with some of their munitions. We can hit. And the crazy thing with these is they can hit the driver's side. Yeah, it's going to be a little collateral, but they're like, okay, we don't want to hit the middle. We want to hit the driver's side. So Hamas understands this. They understand. And this is just what they know about, right?
Yeah.
This is what they know about.
Meter long. We found a way to put 6 samurai swords a meter long and a missile and hit you with it. Like, this is a message, man.
Samurai swords. Sometimes it's like the Matthew McConaughey commercial. Sometimes to go forward, you gotta go back. Right? Like sometimes to advance, we gotta go back to flying samurai swords. So obviously, Donald Trump pushed this across the finish line.
Of course he did.
But Joe Biden just saying, does Trump deserve credit? He says, is that a joke?
A joke? Well, he didn't answer it.
This is a small, despicable man. And I don't know, before we get to these nominees, because I want to get these nominees, did you see this signing ceremony he had yesterday?
Who? Biden?
Biden, yeah.
What was he signing this time? No.
He was designating like a national monument. That's what he does. He'll take hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, millions of acres, say it's a national monument, you can't do anything there. So you can't have natural gas exploration, oil exploration, anything like that.
Yeah.
I just want you to see just how badly his mental state has declined. This is him signing it. Listen to what he says as he's signing it.
Of the Highlands National Monument. Here we go.
I fill this in?
I know, Santino, I'm trying, the day of, in this hand, you'll fill in the dates here, guys? All right.
He wasn't telling a joke.
No, I know
It's
that,
him.
but I don't want to.
It's him struggling to figure out, do I fill this in? He says, by this hand, what I fill this in. You guys going to fill this part in? I posted on Twitter, on X, got retweeted a bunch. Every now and then I'll post something that gets retweeted a lot.
Sure.
Other times I post something, 3 people see it. That's fun.
Welcome to my world, yeah.
If this was any other legal document, if this was a video of someone signing any other legal document, that document would be tossed out. Imagine if this was a grandfather signing a will to disinherit his son.
Yeah.
And they hand it to him. He's never seen it before, obviously. He's like, what is this? What is this all about? Oh, you gotta fill this in? What does this mean? What are we doing here? I guess I'll just sign it. And you had that on video.
Yeah.
The judge would toss out the will. Because one of the elements of a last will and testament is that it actually has to be the signatory's will. They have to intentionally know what they're signing. Any other document, this would most likely be tossed out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is worse than trying to write a deal on a cocktail napkin.
I think it's even worse than that, Max, because he said, will you fill in the detail? Like, will you fill this in with the level of comfort? Like, that's what he does with every document. So how many documents came across his desk where somebody was just filling it in?
So what I believe has to happen, absolutely has to happen, is everything Joe Biden's done since he had that debate, since the leaks started coming out about his declining mental state, since we've gotten more and more information about it. We've known it for years, but since the hard and fast evidence has come out, everything he's done has to be challenged. It's unprecedented. What do you do for a president who signs a pardon who doesn't have the mental faculties necessary to sign something, right?
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
learn that Dr. Jill Biden made more and more decisions, well, she's not the president.
No.
Right? I mean, these have huge ramifications. This one, I believe this is the easiest one to challenge. Joe Biden just signed something, and there is more than enough evidence in this 20-second video that he doesn't actually know what's going on. He's confused by it. He's never seen it before. He's genuinely perplexed. If you get this one tossed out, then it opens up the floodgates for everything else he's done. Right?
Well,
so this has to be challenged.
And imagine how far back that's going to have to go. How many people are going to have to testify to say, when did you know that Joe Biden didn't have the mental capacity to sign these documents, right? And I would say it would probably almost be day one. I mean, it would certainly go back to the Her investigation where they were sitting there and he called him a nice, kind old man who just didn't have his faculties, right? And that's a year old now?
Yeah.
And that's 1 year. That's 1/4 of the presidency. Well, let's say a quarter, the last quarter of his presidency. But how far can we go back? Can we go back to day one? Can we go back to halfway through? I mean, can we look at the Hunter Biden pardon and actually say this is something he wanted to do?
Interesting thing, that Hunter Biden pardon, for whatever reason, isn't actually in the DOJ database of pardons. It's only accessible through like the Freedom of Information Act databases. So that pardon, at least online, hasn't officially been logged in as a pardon yet. Very weird. But yeah, absolutely. Shandy Pants is saying release the Her tapes. Absolutely. Release all of that. Build the case that this man has been a puppet and that while the president is empowered with many rights, authorities, liberties, powers, that isn't carte blanche for people to do it on his behalf. And that if he doesn't actually understand what he's doing, any other legal document would be tossed out. Unprecedented territory. Haven't been here. We've had times where Ronald Reagan, Nancy Reagan was helping out towards the end. We know about, right? Who was the other president?
Roosevelt?
Not Roosevelt. Before Roosevelt.
Well, crap. Now my history of the presidents is gone.
The president who did the League of Nations, Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson.
Wilson in his final days, there's reporting that his wife was helping. So it's happened.
Yeah.
But we also haven't seen spiteful presidents like this on their way out the door saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, no more drilling for oil off the coast of America." That. That's a conversation.
It shocks me. It does. And
that is a conversation we have to have.
Yeah.
And I hope that we do. One thing that the Biden administration is doing to try and gum up the works for Trump, and we're going to get into these nominees, because I know I don't want to be a bait and switch, but one thing that the Biden administration is doing to gum up the works is they've changed the order of succession in many of these government departments and agencies on who runs things in the absence of an officially Senate-confirmed director, assistant director, right? So as Biden's nominees quit and resign, they're changing the order so that the careerists, who aren't political appointees, but they're careerists, who are aligned with them, will take over the reins. Now, they won't be able to completely sabotage, but they'll be able to slow walk things, right? So until Kristi Noem is confirmed as DHS secretary, they'll have likely a Biden-aligned careerist. That's going to make day one deportations a little bit tougher. So Biden's doing that. Again, the question is he really doing it? Obviously, no. But then you watch that clip of him knowing damn well that Donald Trump got this across the finish line. And rather than being gracious and saying thank you to the incoming president for helping out, as his State Department did, he says, "Is that a joke that Donald Trump helped?" So we'll see. 5 days.
Yeah, that same awful smile he had in another clip we did a while back. That blank sort of smile, and then he turns around. Anyway, he feels like a snake to me.
Yeah.
But so I didn't get a chance to watch the Hegseth stuff, man. I was too busy with work that day. I watched Bondi today because I figured she was going to do well. And there were times that she was doing great, and other times they were just asking her such stupid questions. I couldn't have resisted the chance to say stuff like, What kind of dumbass question is that? And why would you ask me this, right?
Yeah.
It's on the tip of her tongue. She wants to say it, but she's a pro. You know, she goes out there. She represents herself well. Oh,
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, let's play some of these clips. The most disgraceful clip comes from Tim Kaine. Who brought Pete Hegseth's children into this.
Oh, that.
And play the clip.
Cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared? How is that a complete clear?
Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she was, and you cheated on the mother of that child.
She would bring this
2
up
months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges.
Well,
It was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And
That was the bit in the hotel where he was accused of raping a woman. And the police not only didn't charge him, according to the police report I read, but actually were considering charging the woman because there was sufficient eyewitness testimony and camera evidence that she was the one leading this, that she was the one wanting to go back to his room. And he was completely blackout drunk. Not saying that it's better or it's acceptable, but to see Tim Kaine twisting this. And I want to find the bigger part because he actually insinuated that if Pete Hegseth can't honor his oath to his wife, how could he ever honor his oath to America?
Oh, that's like calling the kettle black. My God, really?
Especially for Democrat members of Congress.
Wow.
Let's see if we...
I love the lady that's sitting behind him who looks totally pissed off, like looking at the guy for that question. Like,
oh, yeah.
It's low. Dude, that's low. That's the worst one I've seen.
I'm trying to download the full one. Yeah, no, Tim Kaine was terrible. Here is the
what an
longer
a-hole.
one. Here's the longer one. It's going to be a little bit... It's a vertical video, but it's the fastest one I can find.
Yeah. In each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, I'm not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
The gotcha. In Washington, D.C., of all places. In Washington, D.C., of all places, to bring this up. Chandy says, gotta play the Mark Wayne Mullen rebuttal. Way ahead of you. Here it is.
Secretary of Defense is, because I Googled it, and went through a lot of different sites, and really it's hard to see, but in general, the U.S. Secretary of Defense position is filled by a civilian. That's it.
And that is all of the requirements. You just have to be a civilian. But here it gets better.
If you have served in the U.S. Army Forces and have been in the service for, you have to be retired for at least 7 years, and Congress can weigh that. And then there's questions that the senator from Massachusetts brought up about serving on a board inside the military industry, and yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary of Austin, we had to vote on a waiver because he stepped off the board of Raytheon. But I guess that's okay because that's a Democrat Secretary of Defense. But you so quickly forget about that. And then Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And Jennifer, thank you for loving him through that mistake. Because the only reason why I'm here and not in prison is because my wife loved me too.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Tim Kaine over there just taking the beating. And remember, Tim Kaine was almost our vice president. How quickly we forget he was Hillary Clinton's running mate.
Oh my God, he was.
Yeah. It's easy to forget because just like what's his name, I've already kind of forgotten him. Kamala Harris's running mate, Walz. They both fit this mold of like this Rust Belt, Appalachia, Midwest white guy with gray hair who can appeal to the guy who just works on his truck. That's like these people came out of a Democrat factory for we need white voters. Who should our candidate be? How quickly we forget he was almost in a position like this to be in administration.
I wonder if people have seen any one of those senators who was going after Hegseth drunk when they were there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Chandy says, I've never seen Tim Kaine and Tim Walz in the same room. Yeah. Just saying, they could be the same person. They could be clones for all we know. So that was Tim Kaine.
That was
going
unbelievable.
After.
Yeah.
Then we also had a really funny moment from Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren grilling Hegseth. Will he pledge to follow the same rules that generals follow, where they can't go into the defense industry after they leave office? And Hegseth's answer was so great, the crowd laughed at Pocahontas. Here we go.
I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years? But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be.
I'm not a general.
You won't pledge? I'm not a general. Why should I have to pledge to do what generals do? I'm not a general. Right? I'm a civilian.
Yeah. I hate the rank once, but I mean, that's it. Wow. She's stupider than a brick. I mean, that's incredible to watch.
The look as the entire room is laughing at her. And it's like, ooh, I guess I forgot. Really great. There was also
liberalism.
Mazie Hirono of Hawaii was insufferable. Here's a clip.
Multiple reports of your regularly being drunk at work, including by people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know that being
as she's kind of slurring her
way through.
Yeah.
Work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ?
Senator, those
Yes
are
or no?
multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC
Do you
News
know that
run directly
drinking on the job
contradictory to the dozens of men and women at Fox News
contemplated
Channel
I'm
who
not
I work
hearing-
with
I'm
who
not
came
hearing
on
the
the
answer to my
record
question.
and said they've
In your
never
opening
seen
statement,
that.
Mr. Hegseth, you commit to holding leaders accountable at all levels. That includes you, of course. And frankly, as secretary, you will be on the job 24/7. You recently promised some of my Republican colleagues that you stopped drinking and won't drink if confirmed, correct?
Absolutely.
Will you resign as Secretary of Defense if you drink on the job, which is a 24/7 position?
I've made this commitment on behalf of
Will
the
you
men and women I'm
resign as
serving.
Secretary of Defense
I've
if
made this
you
commitment
drink
on
on the
behalf of
job?
the men and women I'm serving.
I'm not
because it's the
hearing-
most important deployment
I'm not
of my
hearing an
life.
answer to my question.
So did you hear what she's trying to say? It's a 24/7 job. So if you ever drink, you would be drinking on the job.
The job.
So
Like I
will
said,
will you pledge to resign if you ever drink? That's basically what she's demanding that he do.
Well, did anybody care when Lloyd Austin disappeared for 3 weeks to have surgery? He just disappeared. It's a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
Isn't that worse?
You know, it's also a 24/7 job being a member of Congress.
Is it?
Yes. And do you know what Nancy Pelosi did? She opened a liquor store in the Capitol building where you could get 6-packs and more on the job. Now, it makes sense because you have an office, right? You have a congressional office. You're bringing people in, you're schmoozing people, right?
Yeah. Oh.
We've all seen House of Cards, right? We've all seen these different movie shows. Pour, what do you want? Oh, I'll take a whiskey on the rocks. Pour it. It's how business gets done. But it's very fresh and very interesting that this woman is clearly slurring her words in a work environment that has a liquor store. She has an office with beer and liquor in it. I guarantee it. She's sitting here trying to entrap Pete Hegseth to say, if you ever drink on the job, it's a 24/7 job. Will you pledge to resign if you ever drink? Wow, it seems like she might have had a few before getting on that dais. What they're mad about is this picture. This is a picture, in case people don't know. Hegseth is drenched in champagne. This was a New Year's Eve episode. He was in a dunk tank full of sparkling wine.
That's so gross.
It's so gross. But he gets dunked, and he picks up a bottle and just goes, ah. It's New Year's Eve. He's playing into the bit. It's funny. It's funny.
Okay.
Right? That's the story, that he was drunk on the job. If that's the case, what's going to happen to Anderson Cooper? He gets shit-faced every New Year's Eve.
Yeah. Like every year.
Every year.
It's the joke. It's like...
It's the only reason anyone watches the CNN broadcast on New Year's. I tune in because I want to see his giggle fest as he just gets completely wasted. But that was the take. And I'll tell you, Josh, seeing AI coming into this, obviously fake, obviously not real, but what even consumer level AI software can do now is incredible. Here is a new rendition of that exchange.
Literally being drunk at work, including by people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know that being drunk at work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ?
Senator, those
Yes
are
or no?
multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC.
And just so everyone knows, that is an AI-generated video of Mazie Hirono whipping out a bottle of wine, gulp, 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 drinking it, and head hits the desk.
Right.
Funny, right?
Hilarious.
Incredible how easy it is now for consumer-grade tech to whip something like that out. There was also another funny one that ran around, not politically correct at all. I admonished them for some of the language that they used, but just want to show you how easy it is to get the lips to match up with AI-generated audio. Here's another one.
Hegseth, are you attracted to obese Hawaiian women with a below normal IQ?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, are you aware that I used the potty all by myself today?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, you seem to be pretty fertile. If confirmed, would you commit to putting a baby in me?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, are you saying under oath that you refuse to impregnate a portly Hawaiian retarded woman, even if she can use the potty all by herself?
Unbelievable.
Like, if you're just going through, like, obviously this is not like, Mr. Hegseth, are you aware I can use the potty all by myself? Obviously no. But to see how the audio now lines up with the AI altered mouth movement, you gotta be really careful when you see clips, because this is obviously over the top, ridiculous, stupid. But this technology can now alter things slightly to make people look really, really bad. That was for a Twitter video. That I was surprised how good that looked. But yeah, we don't have to get through all of the Pete Hegseth stuff. If you want to know what his hearing kind of looked and felt like, here it is.
Are you willing to support our veterans organizations that will help our veterans get every damn thing that they deserve because they signed on the dotted line to keep us safe?
And that was it.
Oh my God, I poor guy. I mean, we've all had that face when you've had somebody in your ear just going off, right? And you're just trying not to say stuff like, well, I can't say those words right now, but you don't want to say them, right? Unbelievable.
That was how it went.
Yeah, I want to go back to the thing about him being drunk at work. You know, how many senators have prescription drugs that are dropped off on a daily? How many are taking, like memory drugs for, dementia, things like that? So it's a really kind of odd question. Will you be drunk at work? Will you still be on pills when you're here? Will you still be drinking? Will you still be handing out all those cocktails? Just disgusting, man. Just disgusting.
Not good to be drunk at work. Definitely not.
Oh.
I've drunk on streams before. It sometimes it's good, sometimes bad. But you realize the context of this stuff. Like they're talking about like a New Year's broadcast, a Christmas broadcast where they all have champagne and drinks, right? Where he's on Fox and Friends in the morning and a brewery comes and they all taste the beers, right? I mean, it's very easy to look at the evidence and say, "Oh, you were drinking at work." Right? But that doesn't mean that he is just a complete debased alcoholic. And the line that always comes in is, you came back from Iraq and Afghanistan and you started drinking. Yeah, no shit.
Really?
I mean,
like he's the first?
This is the way he explains it, that when he came back from deployment is when he started drinking, and he's not the first one to do it. It's almost like these people would have preferred that he had turned to pills. That's like, I guess, a little bit more fashionable to turn to Percocet.
Right.
And I think that is what sets Pete Hegseth apart from the class that's usually in line for this job. He has done the on-the-ground work. He's been a platoon leader. He's trained in counterinsurgency. He's also experienced, I don't want to diagnose him with PTSD, but he's experienced what it's like to come home to a country that isn't quite the same as that you left, and to experience all the stresses that don't get left behind on the battlefield. Lloyd Austin's never experienced that. Lloyd Austin's never experienced coming home, leaving buddies behind, and turning to a bottle. That's something that you can't really speak to in other people who have been Secretary of Defense. Obviously, you don't want an alcoholic as Secretary of Defense. And he said he's turned his life around and that he just drinks casually at events now. But that's an experience that isn't necessarily a negative, right? Knowing what it's like to come home. Every Secretary of Defense should understand that. If you don't understand what it's like to come home, how can you ever make the decision to send them over? Right?
Yeah.
You have to understand it.
I wonder if they've ever donated to some of these charities that help with guys who come back with PTSD and addiction problems, because our military sends them to do things that are really tough.
Yeah.
Right? I would be shocked. Maybe they don't understand what it's like when you're deployed and you come back and suddenly you're looking for something and you find that in a substance, right? I mean, it's a story that's been told over and over and over. That's why we try to help all of our military that's ever needed it, right? I mean, if you give away and you believe in it, you give away to those organizations. I bet no one who admonished him out there had given anything, like, or maybe even dealt with soldiers before, right? They have no clue. It's just there for show. It's the pander, right? It's make him look bad so I can vote no. Consciously, my conscience tells me that I have to vote no on this one. He's just too much of an alcoholic. Just total bullshit.
So he's going to get confirmed. Joni Ernst came out yesterday and tweeted out he's going to be confirmed. And I'll see if I can find the video of Blumenthal. I think it was Blumenthal was on the air when he learned about this in real time, and he was kind of shocked and flabbergasted. It's a 2-minute clip.
I know they can be long.
I'll see if I can cut it down. Why don't we, while I'm doing that, why don't you play the ones that you brought for Pam Bondi?
Yeah.
And right now it looks like you've put them halfway in. I don't know if that's just because you watched them or if
I queued it. I queued it. Hopefully they're queued in the right spot.
I didn't change it.
Cool. So if anybody was watching the Bondi stuff today, I mean, she kind of faced the same sort of F you trying to catch you moments. Mm-hmm. And in one of these exchanges, she's just being gone after hard. I forget what senator's name this is, but he's just being a total dick to her. And, she says she doesn't want to be bullied.
Equal, fair system of justice. If I am the next Attorney General, absolutely. And no one is above the law.
Under what circumstances will you prosecute journalists for what they write?
This is where she loses it.
I believe in the freedom of speech. Only if anyone commits a crime. It's pretty basic, Senator, with anything, with any victim. And this goes back to my entire career for 18 years as a prosecutor and then 8 years as Florida's Attorney General. You find the facts of the case, you apply the law in good faith, and you treat everyone fairly.
This is what Democrats are so good at doing, and I'm so glad it's becoming less and less effective, taking something and kind of describing it in the most general sense to make people as angry as possible. What Donald Trump wants to do is to hold journalists accountable who deliberately lie about government policy, politicians. It's very hard with libel laws and slander laws, but deliberately lie. We saw Donald Trump win his lawsuit. They settled out, but he got money, and he got money for his presidential library from Meet the Press. He wants to go after that. He also wants to go after journalists who are fed illegally fed classified documents, sensitive documents, and then knowing that they're not allowed to have them share them, publishing them anyway. For years, we've kind of allowed this to happen. If it was anyone not working for the Washington Post, it would be called mishandling classified documents, possessing classified documents outside of their proper place in custody. If you know what you got, you can't just keep it, right?
Yeah, you can still be prosecuted for that. I know everybody claims that whole freedom of press stuff, but if you're holding classified docs, nobody else has. You can be busted. Like the paper could be busted that you work for. Everybody that was your source on it, right? It's just they've let it slide so much because the Democrats have been the ones doing the leaking, right?
And look at the case of the IRS employee who's now begging for a pardon, who was convicted of deliberately leaking Donald Trump's tax returns to try and hurt his candidacy. If you are a news outlet and you get tax returns from someone who is not the subject of the tax return, you have an obligation not to publish it. You know it came to you illegally.
Yeah.
You know it didn't just fall off a truck. And the days of being able to claim ignorance have to be over. So that's what Donald Trump's talking about. But you see the left say, oh, he wants to imprison journalists. Well, yeah, people who commit these crimes would be journalists, but that's not saying he wants to imprison all journalists. But that's just like when he says, I want to deport illegal aliens, say, oh, he wants to deport immigrants. Well, they're a class of immigrants, but they're illegal immigrants. Oh, he wants to deport Hispanics. Why are you throwing Hispanics in cages? Well, actually, it's not just Hispanics. It's people of all nationalities, all ethnicities who are now coming across the border illegally. They're very, very good at that. They're very good.
I was going to say they're going after all day for that. I mean, it just wasn't one. It was like almost every person that sat there and would talk to her kept saying the same thing. Are you going to prosecute for January 6th? Was the November 20th, 2020, or the election stolen, right? Mm-hmm. If that's all they can come out swinging with, we go back to that boxer analogy you had at the very beginning of the show, right? It's just jab, jab, hook, jab, jab, hook. They have nothing. They're throwing nothings at them, Max. And I really wish she would have pushed back even more, because I think she held back in most of her answers. I think Hegseth held back in the things he really wanted to say, right? Yeah. And I think there's got to be a moment where they have to, they got to start punching back, right? Otherwise, you're just a punching bag.
Usually for people who don't know, if you're going to score boxing, you score it by the round, and it's who landed the most punches, right? And whoever landed the most punches get 10 points. Whoever landed the least amount of punches get 9 points. They basically get 1 extra point. You can stray from that, but that's typically how it goes. With this, though, I don't know. What do you do when someone lands no punches? Do they still get a 9? I would have imagine if you had a boxing match where someone just kept getting punched in the face and never landed a single punch. Like you don't or never even tried, right? I don't think they landed a single punch. You have one more Pam Bondi clip. I have a Pam Bondi clip with pencil neck Schiff.
Oh, you
want to make sure we
Schiff.
don't have the same one. We don't
No,
have the same one, right? Okay, go ahead, play yours.
Yeah. We'll just start with
serve
it.
as the chief law enforcement officer in our country. So it's imperative, Ms. Bondi, that you subscribe to facts and evidence and not politically convenient conspiracy theories. Your job will be, your job will be to protect
a dick move.
voters and election workers, not to undermine and dox them. Now, I know that earlier you agreed that Joe Biden is in fact president, but many of the president-elect's inner circle continue to spread the big lie about the 2020 election.
Here it is again.
Then we'll move on to a different topic. 'Cause I know
Senator,
that's one
you were
that you're obviously
speaking.
not comfortable
May
with.
I speak? You cut
When
me
I ask
off
you the
when I
next
was
question,
speaking.
you can speak, and I hope you answer, Ms. Bondi.
Well, I'd
now,
like
when
to
we met
answer
yesterday,
the previous one, Senator.
when we met yesterday,
You pointed your finger at me and
you
said
did not
you were
seem
speaking.
to be familiar
Let me answer
with
my question.
the
I'm not going to be
citizenship
bullied by you,
clause, the
Senator
14th
Padilla.
Amendment of the United States of America, which was deeply disappointing.
I guess you
And I'm
didn't want to
hoping
hear
you're more
my
familiar
answer
with it
about
today
Pennsylvania.
after I gave an opportunity.
This is where I'm going to call bullshit on this. If these Democrat senators believed that she was going to go into office and prosecute Donald Trump's political opponents, they would never speak to her like this.
Yeah.
This is where their behavior disproves their hypothesis. If she was this radical who was going to go into office and prosecute anyone who dared insult her or the president, then this guy would be facing an indictment in a couple weeks. He'd know that, and he wouldn't possibly treat her like that. And yet they continue to feel so comfortable walking all over her. I mean, a lot of these hearings go, and at the same time, they only have 5 minutes each round. So if they don't ask a question, you're not allowed to answer. And there wasn't really a question there, though I understand why she was pissed off about the insinuations he was making. If they truly believed this stuff, they wouldn't be acting like this. They would try and get the gotcha questions in without behaving in a way that would open themselves up to prosecution if they were right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, you're making an interesting hypothesis there, right? Because they'd be kissing her ass if they felt like their head was on the chopping block. I mean, that's essentially what you're getting at, right? I really hated that. It felt like he was disrespecting her because she's a Republican and because she's a woman. Like the way he talked down to her almost felt... It felt wrong, man. The way he was just going after her personally. Every time she wanted to say something, he kept bullying her, and she points it out, right? I mean, you can't keep coming at me like this. But she gets to a point where she says that Kleinsmith is the one who eventually, was lied and tried to go after other people by signing a FISA warrant, right? I mean, that's... What she's pointing out is that Joe Biden's people did go after their political opponents, and this guy's trying to get her to make a statement saying that she would go after them. I mean, it's just crazy.
Chandy says they know we play by the rules so they can get away with it. Absolutely. They are trying to force the Trump administration to promise not to do what the Biden administration just did for 4 years.
Yes.
They're trying to pretend it didn't happen and say if Donald Trump indicts a single Democrat, it will have been the first time the DOJ was ever politicized.
Sure.
That's the narrative they're trying to create. And this clip, Josh, it was the same thing from Pencil Neck, Adam Schiff. I have that clip. It's a little bit long, but we'll play it and we'll cut it and talk in the middle of it. Here's Schiff.
No worry about divulging
I'm sitting
law
here as a
enforcement
nominee.
sensitive information. So just tell us,
I'm
are you
sitting here as
aware?
a nominee.
Just tell us, are you aware of a factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Yes or no?
Senator, what I'm hearing on the news
Are
is
you aware of
horrible.
a?
Do I know if he
you
committed
seem
a crime?
reluctant.
I have not looked
You seem reluctant to answer a simple question.
She just answered the question. What I'm hearing on the news sounds horrible, but I haven't looked into all of the specifics. That's the answer. He doesn't like the answer, so he talks over her.
Let me ask you a different simple question. The president also wants to jail Liz Cheney. Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual basis to investigate Liz Cheney? Yes or no?
Senator, that's a hypothetical, and I'm not going to answer that
No,
question.
it's not hypothetical. I'm asking you, sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Her answer here is actually very smart, because if she was to say no,
Yeah.
and then the DOJ was to indict Liz Cheney could then use this video to say, how could it possibly be, given the fact that 5 days ago, however many days ago, the incoming Attorney General said there was no predicate, right? So unlike the other one, this one, she says that's a hypothetical and I'm not going to answer that, which is the answer that judges and prosecutors and attorneys general give when they're asked to talk about potential litigation, because they don't want to say something that could prejudice themselves and derail that. That's why if you have a judge nominee on that hot seat and you ask them about a specific case that might reach the Supreme Court, they'll say that's a hypothetical case that I'm not going to talk about because I want to be able to hear that case and I don't want to basically take myself off of it by sharing my opinion. So her answer there is, yeah, it's a dodge and weave, but it's a dodge and weave in a way that she understands Liz Cheney might be facing a grand jury, and she doesn't want to basically pull the rug out from under that action by giving an answer now.
I want to go back to what you said. I think it was on Monday or sometime last week, is that in order for the Democrats to stop using this kind of weaponized DOJ stuff in the future, is they've got to feel that pinch.
Yeah.
Right? And what they're trying to get here is a commitment so the pinch doesn't happen. And he's like trying to bail out his colleagues who did do really horrible things, I think, and who probably are facing real charges, right? Real indictments as they're coming forward. So it's a sneaky play, man. And, Pitzelneck's, I mean, he's as shifty as they get.
He is also on the hot seat because of the stuff he did.
That's right.
As a congressman.
That's right.
Like, there's a reason he's trying to get her to say stuff that derails potential investigations, indictments, because if those investigation indictments move forward, his neck is potentially under the guillotine as well.
Good Lord.
Let's listen a little bit more.
Yeah.
Senator, no one has
Based on
asked
what you
me
know.
to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a
The
hypothetical.
president has called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate.
But the president
Liz.
has
We're
called-
also
the
worried about
president-
Liz Cheney,
the
Senator.
president has
You know what
called
we
for
should
this-
be worried about?
Ms. Bondi,
the
please
crime rate
answer
in
my
California
questions.
right now
You
is
are
through
aware,
the roof.
Ms. Bondi,
Your robberies are 87% higher than the national
my question
average.
is this.
That's what I
My
want to
question
be
is
focused
this.
on, Senator.
Do you have the
if I'm
power to
confirmed
say
as
no to the
Attorney
president?
General.
And what you're suggesting today by your non-answer is you don't have the independence to say no to the president. So let me ask you a different question.
Oh my God, he's just
It
making
requires
shit
you,
up.
if you're going to be a good attorney general, to be able to tell hard truths to the president. So my questions now are, can you tell hard truths to the president? So let me start with an easy truth that you could speak to the president. Can you tell us, can you tell him that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election? Can you say that? You have the independence to say that. You have the gravitas, the stature, the intestinal fortitude to say, Donald Trump, you lost the 2020 election. Can you tell us that here today?
Senator, what I can tell you is I will never play politics. You're trying to engage me in a gotcha. I
No,
won't
I'm just
do it.
asking
I,
you a
Perfect
I, I
answer.
won't play
If you can
politics
speak truth
with any ongoing
to power.
investigation,
So let me ask you another.
like you did
let me-
leaking your
let me ask
colleague
you-
Devin Nunes's memo.
If you can't answer the question,
Boom.
let me ask you a different, what should be a simple truth, not a hard one. Was there massive fraud affecting the result of the 2020 election? Yes or no?
Why are they still doing
Senator,
this?
I'm glad you asked that question. If you'll let me answer what I saw in Pennsylvania.
No, I asked a simple question about massive fraud.
I
Wow.
can only tell you what I saw in
No, I know you want to
Pennsylvania.
answer a different question, but
She wants to answer it, and he says no.
my
No.
question is,
Yeah.
can you tell us whether there was massive fraud affecting the results of the 2020 election? Yes or no? Was there
I
or
can
was there
tell
not?
you what I saw when I went
That's
as an
not my,
advocate
that's
to
not
the
my
campaign.
question. So you can't answer that question. You can't speak that even easy truth to us, let alone to the president. So let me ask you a different question.
What a dick.
It will also be important that you give good advice to the president. Are you prepared to advise the president not to pardon people who beat police officers?
What?
Senator, as I said, the pardons are at the direction of the president. We will look and we will advise. I will look at every case on a case.
so you
Let me
look
finish.
at-
On a case-by-case
Okay,
basis.
okay, good.
And I abhor violence to police officers.
Follow up with that. So will it be your advice to the president, Mr. President, I know you said you want to issue hundreds of pardons on day one. Will it be your advice to the president? No, Mr. President, I need to go over them on a case-by-case basis.
It's not
Do
her
not
job.
issue blanket pardons. Will that be your advice to the president?
Senator, I have not looked at any of those files. If confirmed, I will look at the files
And
for
will
the
you be able to
pardons, as
do,
well
will
as
you
the
be able to
ongoing
review
investigation.
hundreds of cases on day one?
I will look at every file I am
Of course
asked
you
to
won't.
look
So
at.
will you advise the president?
Of course you won't.
Can I answer the question?
Well, my question
I
is-
would have plenty of staff. You said, of course you want.
You'll be able to review
Listen, I'm
hundreds
not
of
going to
cases on the first day?
mislead this body nor you.
All right, let me ask another question. You don't want to answer that, let me ask
You were
another question.
censured by
It will
Congress,
also-
Senator, for
it will
comments.
Just like this. Comments just like this.
He's asking complicated questions, demanding yes or no. So yeah, she's one of those times where he said, was there massive fraud that affected the 2020 election? And he said, can you answer that question? She said, yes, I can answer that. I'll answer that with what I saw. He says, oh, so you can't answer the question. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'll answer it. No, you can't answer. Let the record show the nominee can't answer. Well, sir, I'll answer. No, you can't. You can't answer. That's what he was just doing. It's insane.
And I don't think he really wanted to give her, like, he was afraid she was going to start explaining it and what she saw in Pennsylvania, right? And then there would be a public record of it. And he's like, whoa. I really don't want the answer.
We don't want you to answer.
Just sit here and let me talk over you.
It's all gotchas. It's all traps. Listen.
Why go back to the 2020 stuff all the time?
Because they want to. These nominees are getting through. They didn't land a single punch on Hegseth. He's going to be confirmed. We didn't even play any Marco Rubio clips. He's fine. Pam Bondi through. No problem, right? These nominees are getting confirmed. The only chance they have is the Hail Mary throw to try and get these nominees to say something that the mainstream media will pick up and basically beam into everyone's home as to why these nominees are unfit. And relitigating 2020 election, they know down the street there are producers and associate producers who would happily build entire segments around the 2020 election if Pam Bondi was to answer that a certain way, right? It's a Hail Mary throw. Yeah. They're throwing it up and hoping something lands, because if they don't, I mean, that's why you had Mazie Hirono and all these women on the committee attacking Pete Hegseth for making the very simple comment that the standards for women on the front line are lower than the standards for men on the front line. Do you know that the standards to ace a deadlift for a woman wanting to go onto the front line infantry, to be perfect, a woman deadlifts 210 pounds. It's a lot.
That's a lot of weight. Yeah.
But that is still less than the average soldier wearing a full kit of equipment. So the reason that the deadlift is important, if your buddy just got shot in the leg and you need to carry him, perfect is I'm able to carry him perfectly. So for men, it's 350 pounds. That's perfect. And that is the average Marine with his pack, with his rifle, with his ammunition, with his canteen, all of the stuff in his kit, right? If you can deadlift 350, that's perfect. We know that if someone goes down, you can lift this person and carry them all the way back to the evac, right? What Hegseth was saying is maybe perfect should also be the same weight for women, because if a man weighing more than 210 pounds with his full kit is shot, are we going to pretend that it's perfect for someone not to be able to carry them? Like, it's simple things like that, right? Simple things like that. And they misinterpreted that, took that out of context to accuse him of sexism, of misogyny. And that kind of was the whole clip I played of them all screaming at him just sitting there like 1,000-yard stare. That's them shooting for the moon, right? That's their Hail Mary pass. How are we going to derail this guy? We got to get him to say something sexist. That's the only way the media will beam that into people's homes. Yeah. Didn't work. He's getting confirmed.
It was really crazy how personal they got with Hegseth watching those clips. I mean, that's what just absolute dickhead thing to say to someone. That's all it is. I mean, when you get confirmed with something like this, if they find anything in your life they think they can throw you under the bus for, they will.
Yeah.
And that's got to be like, that's why I never want to get into politics, because, nobody's perfect. Heck, I'm sure isn't perfect. I'm not. I pray every day that.
Yeah.
But the difference between Hegseth, and I think the reason they're scared of him, is because he's not that old general. He's not some sort of a insider, elitist sort of person running the Defense Department, right? He's an actual soldier. And I think that's what they're afraid of, because now they'll have a real perspective on what it means for a soldier to be sent somewhere, right? It's always these people that have never been in combat.
Yeah, and when the DOD is headed up by a civilian, has to be a civilian who doesn't have that high-ranking experience, they defer to the leadership within the DOD. Well, Hegseth is going and saying, we need to clean house. The leadership just lost us a war, and no one lost their jobs. I'm not going to defer to them, right? I'm going to clean house. That's what they're terrified of. That's what they're terrified of. Give you the last word as we wrap up.
It's not over, but you are going to get sick of winning. And then the more and more we do this, the more and more I see it. And I love every day. I mean, tonight we get the last goodbye speech of Joe Biden. I say watch it if you want to, but if you don't want to give it the ratings, don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
That's it. That's it.
We'll cover clips of it if there's anything crazy. But he didn't write it. He's going to
doesn't even know what he's saying.
Teleprompter.
Yeah.
Save the time. Spend your time with your loved ones, with your family. Make a real memory, because whatever Joe Biden does or says, it'll be a footnote. It'll be in the history textbooks. But presidents always look for that farewell address. They want Eisenhower's address warning about the military-industrial complex. They want George Washington's farewell address warning about the threat of entangled alliances, right? That's what they're all hoping for. Joe Biden will never reach that level, because he was the second worst president we've ever had. He's maybe tied for first. Jimmy Carter was really bad. I thought that maybe Joe Biden had taken it. Rereading all the things that Jimmy Carter did and said, he was really, really bad.
Gas crisis. Don't forget that.
He was really bad. No, not even that. When the United States was going into the Gulf War, Jimmy Carter was writing letters to our allies to try and get them to not join the coalition. Yeah. That's public. That's not a secret. That is borderline treasonous. Right? To try and break up an American military alliance because you don't like where they're going. So yeah, he was a really bad president. They like to say he was just a peanut farmer. He was a peanut farmer. No, he was a scumbag. And he was also very, very bad at being president. Joe Biden, it might be a tied for first. But I still think Jimmy Carter edges him. But we'll see.
Yeah. Carter had all his faculties.
Yeah. I think that's why Carter's worse, because everything Carter did was intentional. But then again, Carter also did learn from mistakes a little bit. He learned from mistakes about how he mishandled the Soviet Union. So that's when I start thinking, okay, maybe Joe Biden's worse, because even now at the end, he's saying, oh, illegal border crossings went down after I came to office. He's still lying about it, right? So the more I think about it, it's flips. They're both terrible.
Chocolate chip ice cream.
5 days. That ice cream button is turning into a Diet Coke button in 5 days.
It's McDonald's.
And you see the commemorative Diet Coke that the Coca-Cola company offered?
No.
Oh, you didn't see that? Let me see if I pull it up.
All right. I mean, I know we're trying to wrap this up. Now we got to see it.
The CEO of Coca-Cola went to Trump basically on bended knee in Mar-a-Lago. And this is how you know 2024 is nothing like 2016. Here they are. Here's Trump with the CEO of Coca-Cola, and they offered him that one of one bottle of Coca-Cola, which is branded for the inauguration.
Wow.
First one they've ever done.
It's got to be worth a fortune.
One of one.
Yeah.
Also, knowing Trump, he might just drink it.
Put the bottle up behind him in the Oval Office.
He might just drink it.
Yeah, I hope he does. Yeah.
But this is how we know that going into this presidency, nothing like 2016. 2016, every company was afraid to engage with the Trump administration because the left and the leftists and the media allies had branded him as a pariah. They spent 4 years investigating him, grinding him to a halt. He is the Pinocchio song. There are no strings on me. Donald Trump is going into this second term without any of the strings or baggage that would have held him down if he had won in 2020 asterisk.
And a Diet Coke in a 1911.
Yeah. Get pumped. 5 days.
Excited.
That's it for this edition of the podcast. Give us a subscription, give us a follow, give us a like, thumbs up. Watch us on YouTube, on Rumble, on X Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Tune in for that. We also have the audio edition of the podcast. Keep this as audio friendly as possible so you can listen as you go about your day, as you do your chores, as you go on your commute. So even if you watch us normally, please do subscribe to the audio podcast. It'll auto download. That way you can listen if you miss a show. That's it for this edition. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Josh Hammerling.
Remember, the fight to take back our country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together. See you next time.